So you can't sprint. We talked about that in our last video. What can you do? Well, you can skip, as we've said, and you can run up a hill. So that's what we're going to do today. We're here in Papago Park in Phoenix, Arizona, with our good friend, Dr. John Berardi. Thanks for coming down, JB.
That's me, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here. And we're going to do some skipping to begin with. So different variations of skips with different forces, different velocities, and different ranges. And then we'll take a little bit of a break and then run up the hill a few times. And hopefully you guys can learn from some of the things that we do out here to take home to yourself, so you can ideally at some point learn how to run a little bit faster and take advantage of the great potential and the power in actually sprinting. Quick reminder about why we skip and why you're not ready to sprint maximally yet. Just think about the amount of forces that are going through your system as you move your limbs in space and time with maximal force and velocity, and the amount of power and force that's going into the ground as well. Most people are just not quite ready for those types of forces because they haven't ran for so many, in many instances, like decades, not even years, right? So skipping, because it's a very similar gait where we have the stiffness of the ankle, stiffness of the knee, and stiffness at the hip, is a great preparatory activity to sprinting. So JB's been kind of sprinting now and moving in these types of ways for 3 or 4 years, right? Spent most of his adult sort of activity doing kind of traditional gym-based exercise, like bodybuilding type stuff, strength-based type stuff. And over the last, 2-3 years, been moving in a slightly different way, doing slightly different things, right?
Yeah. Primarily as a goal of moving better as I get older. So I'm coming up on 51 now. And the gym was great for aesthetics and for this, achievement of strength. But it didn't help me play soccer or play football with my kids any better. And in fact, it felt like a hindrance. And as my joints and as my body changed as I got older, I felt like we needed to train it differently.
Absolutely. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with going to the gym to try to look better. That's still a great motivation for all of us. It's just, remember, just as we age, some of these other motivating factors are a little bit more important. Feeling good, moving well. So think about that as we go through all of the skipping and all of the other activities that we're going to introduce you to. So let's start off with just going to skip. There's a couple things I want you to think about. One is that hip extension pattern where you push the knee behind your hip. And second is the interaction of your foot on the ground. Just think about being stiff and tight with your foot and ankle as you impact, and when you push back, you're getting the knee behind the hip.
For someone watching this, how are they thinking about placing the foot on the ground? Are they trying to be up on the front of their foot?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Think about your feet. If you're thinking about it as if you were a boxer and you're hitting a heavy bag, what are you doing with your wrist and your fist?
Yeah, tensing, yeah.
Really tense, and it's the same thing with your foot and ankle. You're thinking about being tense. So you're thinking about a flat foot contact on all of it. You're not actively pushing up into what's called plantar flexion, and you're definitely not striking the ground in a plantar flex position. You're thinking about being stiff on contact with your foot and ankle, and having a degree of stiffness at your knee and your hip as well, as you just bounce along. And I'm going to say this to you a lot, just bounce. Be really free. Don't think about the force. Don't think about the velocity. Don't think about bringing your knees up. All I want you to do is just skip along, get your knee behind your hip and be stiff on the contact. Allow your upper body just to flow. So it'll just kind of look like this. Just skip, 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 and just bounce. Just bounce. Just bounce. Just bounce. So let's give that a try. So just allow the arms just to work in opposition as the legs, and we should see a nice stiff ankle. And well, essentially the gait pattern here is 1-2, then the next leg, 1-2, then the next leg, 1-2. It's a pretty innate skill, right? We're all kind of should be, as soon as we can start running, we can skip. It's something that we learn how to do as kids, and we just kind of forget about it, Just think about your posture a little bit as you did this. If I had one critique of what you did, the ankles are really stiff, arms are swinging nice, everything was kind of fluid and relaxed, but your posture is kind of like this. Think about being here, just being a little taller, a little bit more expressive with it, a little bit more proud, a little bit more bouncy, as if there's something up in the sky pulling you up. Okay, so we're just doing a very basic skipping pattern to get going, and we'll add to this as we go. I love it. Great, 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 great. Push the foot back, push the knee back, and be tight on the ground, tight on the ground, tight on the ground. Great, good. There's a few different ways in which we can manipulate skips. One is through the amount of force that you apply into the ground. One is through the range of motion you can push back, and one is through the velocity, like how quickly you do it. With all of those, the important thing is that it's still really reflexive, coordinated, bouncy, loose, free, and relaxed. Okay? So we'll get to those, but I want to introduce a couple other things now. So you've done a really good job of just doing this skip and coordinating your upper body with your lower body. Now I want you to actually move your upper body in different ways. So we'll skip now, and the arms are going to come across your chest this way. So skipping, and here, skipping, just swing your arms across the chest. So often we kind of forget about the importance of the shoulders and the chest and the pec and all of these things to continue being mobile, and we get them really stiff, and we can't even do that, right? I get a lot of sort of older people doing these skips, and they can just do this. Where it's really important, can you still move your shoulders in all planes and all degrees of freedom, with all degrees of freedom. So we're going to start off, just skip, same as what we did before, low amplitude, arms across your chest, love it, beautiful. Nice, great. All right, so we skipped there with just a normal sort of swing. We skipped with the arms coming across the body. Now can we skip and we coordinate the arms in a big swing back and forth. So really set up this oblique sling on the front and the oblique sling on the back. So the cross body fascial sling. So it'll look kind of like this. Big arms, one arm comes up as the other leg comes forward. Everything else about this is the same with just bouncing, being really stiff on the ground, being as tall as you can, but now a big arms just there. All right, ready? On you. Nice, great, great, perfect. Yeah, good work. Let's do that one more time. Okay. Let's think now, rather than going, I think you went this way, can you actually just go in a neutral arm? So the thumb comes up towards the sky. You were there, your palms were up. So just go there and allow it just to swing naturally with your thumbs up. So it'll look kind of just like this. Boom, 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 boom. All right? Great, good. Good, nice work, great job.
So, we did just, the arm swings this way, but I've seen skips with forward arm circles together, forward arm circles back, obviously just the skipping that we've been doing, alternating arms, so having the arms do different things, like this.
Yeah, like there's no right or wrong way to do this.
Yeah.
Like, just do what feels right, just, all right, what's a little bit tight today? Is my right shoulder a little bit tighter than my left? All right, let me work on just my right as I'm doing this, Am I tight through the pecs? All right, I'm just gonna really warm up the pecs. Do I really like the cross body coordination that this stuff gives? Or do I want to do this and have it more like a sprint where I want to just kind of bounce through the shoulders? Really just be free to be as expressive with how you do this as you like, in your way, whatever feels good to you, whatever you feel like you need to work on. Yeah. As you said, I skip 20 minutes, 25 minutes every morning, and some of it's just here. Yeah. And some of it, like my right shoulder's kind of jacked up today, right? So today I did this a lot, this a lot, and then this a lot. So it's just, listen to your body while I'm skipping. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, right? So it's just, there's no rules to this, Just be free to choose the way in which you want to move, as long as you're just being bouncy and rhythmical and coordinated, just free to bounce.
And is this the right time to talk about, like, how many skips might I want to aim for in a workout or something like that?
Yeah, it's. I feel like we can put a pin in that for now. We're going to come back to that in a bit because it depends on the next thing that we do, which is now the range of motion on the skip, and the force that we put through into the ground, and then the velocity that we get out of it. Okay. Because obviously all of those things is going to dictate the loading parameters, how many, how far. Okay. All right, so we're going to start adding a little bit more range, a little bit more velocity, a little bit more force into the ground. So now, rather than doing a lot of funky things with the arms, we're just going to move the arms as if we're running. So it's kind of a normal running gait, right? So they just swing like this. The thumb comes up to about your chin level, comes down past your pocket, and you just swing it back and forth like that. Allow your shoulders to rock and roll a little bit. So all of the skips now, this is what you're thinking about doing with your arms. The faster we skip, the harder we skip, the bigger and the harder the arm swing. It's pretty simple, really, right? But to begin with, they're just going to be kind of down here, and as we get bigger, they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's start off just with a little bit more range of motion. So now you're going to skip by pushing back a little further, and as you push back, the front foot, the front thigh is going to go a little bit higher, just a little, okay? So just think about getting a bit more of a stretch on the back side, taking a slightly longer step, and a little bit more range on the front side. Okay, so it'll look a little bit like this. So. All right, you want to give that a try? Get a little bit taller, eyes are up, chin's up. Great, good. How's that? Okay, so we're just working on just getting a little bit more range of motion now, so getting just a slightly bigger hip extension pattern. So we're going to do one more where you just think about being a little bit longer still. And to give you a little bit more time to do that, bring the thigh up on the front side a little bit higher. That's going to give you the time on the back side to push back a little bit more. So it'll look like this. So back, 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 back. But if you saw my thigh, it's coming up to about here on the front. Okay, so a little bit more height to it now. Okay? A little bit higher on the front, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher. There you go. Now you got it. Great. Good job.
Those last skips we did, we were trying to increase the velocity, increase our range. Yeah. And at first I was just thinking about like how much distance can I skipping for distance. And you were encouraging me to kind of get my front leg higher.
Yes.
And it wasn't until I really tried to drive it up that I was able to get the range that we're looking for. So is that the cue on that one?
Yeah, there's a couple. It's a really good question, actually. Think about it this way. Like the more range you want, the bigger a shape that you're creating in space. So just think about you're taking up more room in space. The small skips that we started with, it's just kind of a small space, small shape. And as we get bigger, when we start pushing back a little bit faster, a little bit longer, a little bit stronger, it's a bigger shape. So we can do that one of two ways. You can push back, or you can drive that thigh forward and up. It's really hard to do both simultaneously. You can either think about pushing back and then allow that to come up, or you can think about pulling that up and that pushes back. Or you can think about, I'm going to push back, push back, push back, and okay, that feels pretty good. Now I'm going to start thinking about pulling my thighs up and bringing my knees up. And now I'm going to start thinking about bringing my, you don't have to do the same thing every single step is my point, right?
No, that's good, because that's what I landed at eventually, because my first one, I was trying to push. And you kept saying to lift the front leg, and I was like, okay, so pushing isn't doing it all, right? So then I started by pushing, and then with each subsequent, and I noticed with yours too, your knee got higher with each subsequent one until it kind of reached where you wanted it to be and then stayed there, which that felt like the good cue for me. Push, push, now lift, lift, you know what I mean?
I think to get going, like for me to start walk from here to there, I have to push to do that, right? I got to push the foot back behind me to move my center of mass horizontally in that direction. Once I get going and now I have momentum, I can just start thinking about pulling the thighs through. And I get this contralateral push on the other side as a result of pulling. Yeah, it's a really good point.
Okay, so what's next?
Yeah, so I want to do the same thing. But now we're going to start putting it with a little bit more force. So we're thinking about coming into the ground a little bit harder and pushing back harder. Same sort of range. We don't need to be any bigger, really. Just think about being a little bit more forceful as it. Okay? Now I know it's a little bit slippy out here, so it's hard to do it with maximal force, and we're going up a slight hill. Well, let's see what we can do. So I'll give a demo first, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Cool? So start off pretty smooth, and then build, and push. Now pull through, pull through, pull through, pull through, pull through. And I'm now trying to cover a good amount of ground by pulling my thigh forward and allowing my back knee to travel back behind the hip. It should look now, if I had a frame on the side, it should capture that sprinting position, like right here. Be really stiff on the contact, pull through, get some height and distance. Push, push, now build, start pulling through, get some height, up, 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 up.
So I have played around with taking the arms out of it. So skipping with hands on hips or hands on head or whatever.
Okay.
And I felt like, I don't know if this makes sense to you as a sprint coach, but I felt like if I was teaching kids how to skip, and they weren't using their arms enough.
Or adults, because adults don't use their arms a lot when they're skipping and running as well.
Exactly, both skipping and running. When you take the arms out of the equation, they feel how much harder it is. And then they want to use their arms. You know what I mean? So is there a place for...
Yeah, I feel like if somebody's skipping and they're not using their arms or they can't feel it, that's, taking that, using that as a constraint, like taking the arms and the ability to coordinate through the entire system out of the way, that's a really good way to do it. I would keep it here or here. I wouldn't, for most people, go above the head. If you think, especially adults, kids is a little bit of a different deal. Adults, most of them cannot really extend through the hip well. And any additional extension they get comes from lumbar extension. And think of what we do when we do that. We get more extended through the lumbar and less through the hip. So do it from here. If you're going to take no arms, go here or here. I wouldn't put it above the head, really. Yeah, really good question.
So today we're skipping at this beautiful park on a gravelly path. And I'm wondering if people have this question, like, what surfaces should I be, like, should I be skipping on the road? Should I be skipping on grass? Should I be skipping on a trail, on artificial turf? Where would be the ideal place?
I think ideally it's a golf course, right? So it's a beautiful, flat, green grass. I mean, that's great. Like grass would be the best place to run. It's the best place to skip. The softer, easier surfaces are generally a little bit easier on the tissue and the joints and the bones, so it's just the best surface for that. And then you just work back from there, right? This is a great surface to skip on as well, right? It's a little bit uneven, which is great because it's working on the variability of the step. So there's a lot of really bonus stuff that we get from there. Concrete probably is the worst thing to skip on. But if you're a good skipper and your mechanics are good and you work up to it, it's not a problem. Like I said, all my skipping is done on concrete. I never have an issue with my feet, with my ankles, with my shins, my knees. No problem at all. But if you do it on a local track, ideally you've got a real nice grass park that doesn't have any divots in it, right? If you don't have that, then just work back from that. So today we did some low amplitude, easy bounce skips, just learning about the contact being stiff on impact, allowing the arms just to rock and roll in coordination with the skips. Then we started introducing the arms a little bit, moving the arms across the body, to just letting them swing in any direction, any way that you want. Just be free to express yourself in any way with the arms. Like, what's a little bit tight today? Oh, my shoulder's tight, let me work the shoulder. Pec is tight, let me work the pec, so on and so forth. Don't be constrained by a protocol or whatever on that. And then we started increasing the velocity through increasing the range of motion and the force that we apply into the ground. So pushing the knee back and driving the knee forward and hitting the ground harder, which in essence is just like acceleration. The best way to work on acceleration, and I'm not exaggerating at all, is doing skips for distance. We do skips for distance with elite sprinters twice a week, almost all year round.
What distance?
Probably 30, 40 meters, Sometimes we'll do them up a hill. Like we have a nice hill here, because what are we doing? We're pushing back, extending the hip, moving the center of mass forward in a pretty accelerating position, especially if we're doing it on a hill. So if you want to get a better acceleration, do a skip for distance, where we ended up with. The second best, or maybe equal best, is doing accelerations, normal accelerations, up a hill. The safest way to actually sprint. As we said in our last video, sprinting in and of itself, without a hill, not super safe for most people. But if you've got a hill and your mechanics are pretty good and you're used to it, run up it. So let's go do that now. Let's talk briefly about this hill. Let's talk first about the gradient and the length. So there's an inverse relationship here. The more the gradient of the hill, the less the length that you want to sprint up it.
So you mean the more steep?
The more steep it is, right? So we've got a hill over here that looks to be about 10 or 12 degrees on the steepness, on the rise of it. And I feel like this is a nice hill. If it wasn't so slippy, and it is a little bit slippy out here, this would be a good hill to accelerate up to about 30 or 40 meters on. I wouldn't want to do much more than that. It's anything over 30, 40 meters, you're not really accelerating anymore. Now you're just getting tired and you're getting fatigued. I like to keep our hill accelerations actually to 20 or 30 meters and maybe a little bit steeper than this. But I think for most people, this gradient is about right. And I would do somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 40 meters. How many I would do of these kind of depends on your fitness, how fast you're doing them, what your recovery is, how much time you've got, all those sort of things. But it's anywhere between sort of 5 and 20. Really.
And would a workout, again, if I was putting one together, look like starting with skips and then moving into...
100%.
So I probably wouldn't start here.
Oh no, I would not skip. I would start with exactly what we did. Like that whole progression that we just did. We were skipping, walking back, skipping, walking back, just getting a little bit more range, different ways, different playing with it a little bit more power. And once you've done that, 10 or 15 minutes, let's move to the hill and actually start accelerating up the hill, maybe at 60%, next one is 70%, next one is 80%. Maybe you're doing a couple of hard skips up the hill even. And then when you feel like you're good, all right, my tissues are ready, the joints are ready, I'm feeling neurologically, I'm ready to sprint. All right, let's sprint. And then probably it starts then, and I'm going to do 5 or 8 or 10 or 12. And you know, if you're super fit, like you're a super fit guy, you've done this a lot, you could probably do 12 by 30 meters with 2 to 3 minutes rest, something like that. That would be a really good sprint acceleration session for you up a hill, preceded by at least 20 minutes of warming up.
That's a 45-minute
100%
workout.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so now we're over here, we've seen the hill. It's actually a little bit steeper than it looks like from over there, right? And it's kind of, you know, it's pretty slippy. So we're not going to create some big, expressive, violent acceleration shapes here. It's going to be smaller steps probably. So, you know, on the long-range camera here, it's not going to be beautiful looking accelerations that you'll see out on the track. But just think about it this way. We're going to run probably the first one here at 65, 70%. Maybe we'll do 3 or 4 and we'll just get a little bit faster with each. All right. We're thinking about doing the same things, like really, really strong and stiff on impact. Push the knee back to get going. And once you're rolling, start bringing the thigh through. So I think probably because it's slippy as well, if we just take one step, we'll slip back. So we might have to take a couple steps walking into it. So it'll look like this. 1, 2, and go. All right, so just start off, just walk into it and just get bigger and more forceful, more range, more violence with every step. All right, so we did that one at about 65, 75%. We'll go a little bit harder on this one now. We've taken 2 or 3 minutes rest. Again, it's because it's a little bit slippy. We'll take a couple steps to get into it and then just build, okay? 1, 2, pull, pull, push, 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 pull, pull, pull. Really stiff on impact. Drive your thighs towards me. Pull them forward, pull them forward, pull them forward. Yeah, great work. Nice work. All right, so you asked a little bit earlier about kind of how you would set those skips into a workout. And we talked about one way is using those as a long warm-up for a sprint session, which we just did, the accelerations up a hill. As I said, 5 to 12 times sort of 20 to 30 to 40 meters up a pretty good gradient, somewhere between sort of 10 and 15, maybe even 20 degrees if you're really good. That's one way to do it. The other way to do these skips and incorporate them into your training is just do them instead of and you're running. It can be part of your warm-up. So if you're going for a 4-mile run, for example, walk 30 seconds, skip 30 seconds, and then stride 30 seconds, and then just alternate that for the first half mile and finish with that again, or 20 seconds, 20 seconds, 20 seconds. I really like the 20-20-20. Just a nice easy walk and then a nice easy skip, and then with every stride I think about going a little bit faster with it. And it's just an easy way for me to get a little bit more force, coordination into my work. You know what I mean? And you don't have to just do a exactly, rather than only a jog. And rather than only coming out and just doing skips and sprinting. Like if you're not ready to do that, that's a big undertaking, right? That's a pretty aggressive and intense session that we did here today. You don't have to do that. But skipping has all sorts of other benefits other than just warming up to sprint. It has all of these things that I think everybody should be doing in and of themselves. And just, you know, just as I said, just the impact forces that is a little bit more, it's actually quite a lot more than jogging. It's a lot less stress on the knee joint, and there's actually studies and research to show that. So it's really interesting gait pattern. I think we've kind of just forgotten about, you know. And I feel like we talked a lot and we kind of joked about this, and I joked with Andrew about it too, right? I feel like the bottleneck for this is we all the time see people out running together. How would you feel if you were out sort of skipping with other people? You know what I mean? That might be the bottleneck. And I feel like we need to get past that. Like people have asked me this a lot now. Do you get conscious out on the road skipping? Never. I've never even thought about it. I didn't think about it until somebody asked me, are you conscious about it? No. Why would I be? But maybe that's because in track we skip a lot, you know?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just will give an example. There's a number of runners in my neighborhood back at home, joggers, you know, and they'll stop at this little park area where there's some benches, and they'll do stretches, and they'll do some jumps, and they'll do some burpees and whatever. And no one thinks twice about that. But I suspect if no one had ever seen it before, then people would be like, would you feel weird doing burpees at the park in between your run, right? So I don't know. I think maybe people are building it up too much as an impediment when there need not be. You know, I think people will have no problem. They'll be like, there's a person exercising. Period. Done. End of story.
Exactly. And that's what I think too. All right. Thanks for coming down and joining us, man. I really appreciate that. I think that was pretty good.
Yeah. Good workout.
Hopefully that was useful for everybody watching. Skip. Please skip. Don't sprint. If you can't sprint, if you haven't sprinted in years or in decades, do not do it yet. Start with skipping. And once you can do that, you can sprint or stride pretty decently or run a little bit fast. Find a hill like we did here and run up it a few times. When you can do that, do it a few more times. When you can do it again, do it faster. It's progressive overload. It's the key to all training. It's the key to getting better at almost all things. If you haven't done a thing for a long time, don't go do it right away. Progress slowly and patiently. Thanks a ton for joining us.